Oh, yeah. What's up, everybody? This is Big Bad Bob with you here for another episode of the Lone Gunman Podcast. This is episode number 225. That's right. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that's New Orleans. And in particular, Jack Martin. What'd he say? What did he say? What'd he say? What the fuck did he say? Turns out he said a lot of things. And turns out the guy's an old school racist who loves to drop the N-bomb. Yeah. So stick around to the end of the show, and I'll be playing an interview done by Jim Garrison of Jack Martin in 1966 about David Ferrie. And you'll get to hear with your own ears from the horse's mouth. Because there's a lot of things that's been said about Jack Martin, that he was drunk, that he was mentally unstable. But when you hear a person talk, generally you can come to your own conclusions about whether or not this person is reliable, making things up, telling the truth, is crazy, is drunk, or a combination of all the above. But I'll leave that for you to decide. So stick around after the show to hear the audio, which I admittedly pulled off of my buddy Fred Litwin's On the Trail of Delusion YouTube page. Hopefully he doesn't mind. But I'm giving him total proper credit for this audio of the Jack Martin interview with Jim Garrison done in 1966. And it's not very often you get to hear the actual audio, the actual man's voice. So stick around after the show for that if you would like to hear that. And bear in mind, like I said, this guy is an old school racist, and you will hear the N-bomb dropped many times in this interview. So if that's not your thing, then just skip it. But I'm going to do a show before I play that. So after the show, if you want to hear the Jack Martin interview, stick around and check it out. And once again, the audio comes from Fred Litwin and the On the Trail of Delusion YouTube page, where it is posted. Now I'm going to download the audio, and I'm going to try to clean it up and make it a little bit more listenable. It is very old. It is very hard to understand at points. There's many gaps and background noises and things of this nature. But I'm going to try to clean it up as best I can just for you to check out. So, like I said, after the show, stay tuned for that. Now, Jack Martin. Okay, everybody knows Jack Martin, the guy famously pistol whipped by Guy Bannister at the beginning of the movie JFK, and in real life, it did happen. After him and his buddy Guy Bannister were drinking at the Katzenjammer Bar, down the street from the Guy Bannister and Associates office, his detective agency, where Jack Martin was sometime employed or did jobs for Guy Bannister. And there's many iterations of the Jack Bannister story, or Jack Martin story. It has to do with Guy Bannister and why he pistol whipped him. The story goes that they had been out drinking, went back to the Bannister office, and subject came up about the Kennedy assassination, and Martin supposedly said something like, well, what are you going to do? Kill me like you did Kennedy? To which Guy Bannister proceeded to pistol whip him in the head. Now, Bannister did uh, take care and not kill Jack Martin. He called an ambulance for him and went to the hospital and paid his medical bills for him. So that was mighty white of him to do. And supposedly Delphine Roberts, Bannister's secretary, stepped in. Don't kill him. Don't kill him, guy. Don't kill him. I don't know. And I don't know exactly if, you know, that's where this genesis of the whole story started. I've also heard that there was a file missing on Lee Oswald from Bannister's office, and he accused Jack Martin of taking it and proceeded to pistol whip him. Now, again, I don't know. But we wouldn't have all this drama in New Orleans if it wasn't for Jack Martin. Oh, I take that back. It wasn't Jack Martin alone. There was also the Dean Andrews saga that pointed the finger in the direction of New Orleans. But this FBI report from November 25th, 1963, done by Regis Kennedy and Special Agent Claude Schlager in New Orleans, okay? Jack Martin of 1311 North Pryor Street, New Orleans, advised he was listening to a TV program reporting the life of Lee Oswald and reporting various interviews with people in New Orleans that were acquainted with Lee Oswald. Martin stated that one of those people interviewed, whose name he did not know, who he described as a white male, early 20s, wearing horn-rimmed glasses, recalled that Oswald had been active in the Civil Air Patrol with David Ferry. Martin stated that when he heard this, he flipped. Martin advised that in his occupation as a private investigator, he has had occasion to develop considerable information about Ferry and reported it to Richard Roby, a special agent of the Investigative Division, Office of Compliance and Security of the Federal Aviation Agency of Washington, D.C., who must have a big file on Ferry, as they conducted a complete investigation of his activities in New Orleans several years ago. Martin advised that when he called WWL TV station and furnished the station with background information about Ferry, particularly his homosexual tendencies and the fact he formerly operated the Civil Air Patrol, he also told them that Ferry was an amateur hypnotist and that it was his idea that Ferry may have hypnotized Lee Oswald and planted a post-hypnotic suggestion that he kill the president. Martin stated that he has visited in the home of Ferry and saw a group of photographs of various Civil Air Patrol cadet groups. And in this group, he is sure he saw several years ago a photograph of Lee Oswald as a member of one of those classes. He stated he did not recall the group that Oswald was in or any other details. In addition, he stated that Ferry conducted military-type drills with rifles, fatigue clothes, and helmet liners of the Civil Air Patrol cadets, and he recalled that Ferry claimed to have taught these cadets how to shoot. Martin stated he has observed in Ferry's home a number of foreign-made firearms, and it is his opinion that Ferry could have taught Oswald how to purchase a foreign-made firearm, possibly have purchased the gun that was shown on television. He stated that he saw similar type weapons at Ferry's home when he visited there 2 years ago. Martin advised that Ferry discussed with him the charges of crimes against nature which resulted in his arrest by Jeff Parish authorities, and he recalled that Ferry had told him that one of these kids that was a witness against him had moved to Mississippi from New Orleans and subsequently joined the U.S. Marine Corps. He heard on television that Oswald had been in the Marine Corps, therefore he surmised that Oswald was that kid, that he was a witness against Ferry in the crime against nature charge and had joined the Marine Corps. Martin explained it might have been the same individual or a very close coincidence. Martin advised that he has reported this matter to Major Claire of the New Orleans Police Department Intelligence Division, and he felt that Major Claire was not giving the matter sufficient concern, so he called Assistant DA Herman Coleman, who was a former newspaper reporter and who was very familiar with the Ferry case, as he had written various feature stories about Ferry. Martin stated that he explained all of his ideas and suspicions to Coleman. Martin advised he was really suspicious of Ferry's activities when he received a report from Hardy Davis, a New Orleans bail bondsman, who told him that G. Ray Gill, a New Orleans attorney and employer of Ferry, had called him to locate Ferry, who lives down the street from him, and at the same time had denied to the TV station that Ferry was an employee of Gill's office. Davis furnished Martin information that Ferry had left town for Texas on Friday afternoon, November 22nd, 1963, which information he also made available to Mr. Coleman of the DA's office. Martin stated that Ferry is a completely disreputable person, a notorious sexual deviant with a brilliant mind, being highly trained in mathematics, sciences, several foreign languages, including Latin, modern Greek, ancient Greek. Martin advised that Ferry had been educated in a seminary as well and subsequently expelled from the Catholic Church, and he, Martin, suspected him of being capable of committing any type of crime. Martin stated he felt that Ferry's possible association with Lee Oswald could be the subject of a close examination, as he personally believed that he could be implicated in the killing of President John F. Kennedy. Now, that was the earliest FBI interview of Jack Martin post assassination, and really what set the ball rolling. Now, that, of course, upon this information, the FBI interviewed David Ferry about his activities and what he was doing around the time of the assassination, and determined that there was nothing there and dropped it. This mantle was picked up by District Attorney Jim Garrison, of course, 3 years later. Now, fast forward to 3 years later, in December of 1966, the interview that you'll hear at the end of this show was done on December the 14th, 1966. And this statement, um, this statement from Jack Martin comes from December 26th, 1966, given to the State of Louisiana, Parish of Orleans, Office of the District Attorney, regarding Lee Harvey Oswald. In the late summer of 63, I was sitting in the office of Guy Bannister, private detective, 531 Lafayette Street, located to the rear of Mancuso's Cafe. David Ferry walked in wearing an army-type fatigue suit and sunglasses. Also with him were 3 or 4 young men in their 20s, dressed in sports shirts. One of them was Morris Brownlee. Another man was referred to as Lee. After the assassination, I recognized Lee Harvey Oswald as one of the men who had walked in with Ferry and Brownlee. All of them went in to see Bannister, and the door was then shut, so I wouldn't know what they talked about. My reason for being at the office that day was to use Bannister's typewriter, which I frequently did. These people, before seeing Bannister, sat around in the waiting room about 15 or 20 minutes, occasionally picking up magazines to look at. I looked at them frequently because I thought it was a rather odd assortment of people. The above statement is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and is made of my own free will. This statement was given to DA Jim Garrison in the something of Louis Ivon, typed by Louis Ivon on December 26, 1966, and completed at 3:05 p.m. on December 26, 1966. Signed, Jack Martin. Next up, we have from January 6th, 1966, a memorandum to file. Subject, Miss Shirley Basile, white female, 25. Resides at 2833 St. Charles Place, apartment 39. She worked part-time for Guy Bannister from 1960 to 61. She does not know David Ferry, but stated that Bannister did some Norman Rockwell of the American Nazi Party, whatever that means. Stated that Bannister was ultra-conservative. She also knows Jack Martin, and as far as she knew, his reputation was unsavory. She had heard from a source that she can't remember that Martin had committed some abortions in southern Texas. She claims he was notorious. She can't remember any dealings with Cubans while she was employed by Bannister. She will be willing to come up to the office and give any information desired. She is very cooperative. Miss Basile also stated that Anna Burglass was a very close friend of Bannister and did some investigative work for him as well. Also, an investigator named Joseph Newborough worked for Bannister with Martin, and Newborough had spent 5 years in the federal penitentiary for embezzlement. So this was obviously hostile witness testimony. Next up, we have this weird story. September 6, 1968. And this is from a U.S. DOJ FBI official letterhead regarding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, September 16, 1968, Houston, Texas. On September 13, 1968, Mr. David Douglas Doyle, Triple D, 2015, Mason Street, Houston, Texas, furnished the following information. Doyle stated he has been employed as a maintenance man by Mr. Nat Terrence, owner and publisher of the Houstonian, a weekly newspaper published in Houston, Texas, which paper has a limited circulation monthly to people working within the City Hall and the Harris County Courts building. Doyle stated he began his employment with Terrence in December of 67 and voluntarily quit on September 9th, 1968. Doyle advised he was introduced on approximately August 1st of 1968 to one Jack Martin. This introduction took place at the apartment of Nat Terrence in Houston. Doyle went on to state that approximately 2 weeks after he had met Martin, Mr. Terrence told him that a car had been seen driving back and forth in front of Terrence's apartment, and he requested Doyle to go to the street and see what this car wanted. Doyle stated that as he approached the car, he observed two men in the front seat, one of whom was holding what appeared to be a shotgun. As Doyle approached the car sped away. Doyle said that he thereafter returned to Terrence's apartment, where Jack Martin and one David Lewis were staying. Martin was very emotional at this time and appeared to be extremely frightened over the event, which, according to Doyle, prompted Martin to talk about many things. Martin related in the presence of Terrence and Lewis and Doyle that he was one of 7 conspirators in the Kennedy assassination and that there were only 3 of them left. 1 was living in Ohio and 2 who were in Houston. Martin did not identify the other 2 conspirators. He also did not elaborate further on the assassination, as he appeared to have regretted immediately what he said, as if it had been a slip of the tongue. Doyle stated that it was his understanding that Martin had been hiding out in Terrence's apartment because of trouble he was involved in with certain people of the underworld in New Orleans. Doyle stated that based on this episode with the car, as previously maintained, or as previously mentioned, it was the opinion of Terrence that someone was out to kill Jack Martin. Doyle further stated that several days subsequent to this incident, Terrence called the Harris County Sheriff's Office and 2 deputy sheriffs came out and escorted Martin from the apartment. Doyle stated he has not seen Martin since. Doyle went on to state that David Lewis was a friend of Martin and had stayed with Martin in the apartment of Terrence for several days. He stated that both Martin and Lewis were private investigators, and both of them worked with the Central Intelligence Agency in some manner and were acquainted with Guy Bannister in New Orleans. Martin also told Doyle that he was the instigator of the Garrison probe into the assassination of President Kennedy. Doyle went on to state that after Martin had left the apartment, Terrence had asked him to go to the sheriff's office and give them a statement concerning Martin's remarks about the assassination. Doyle stated he did not do this because he did not want to become involved in it. He stated Terrence kept insisting that he do this and told him that he would have him arrested if he didn't do it. Thereafter, Doyle told Terrence he would go to the FBI and report what Martin had told him. Doyle reported that Terrence is a close friend of Sheriff Buster Kern and could probably have him arrested if he wanted to. He stated on September 10th, 1968, Captain T.W. Leonard had left his business card at his apartment with instructions for him to call him. He called Captain Leonard to find out what he wanted, but Leonard would only tell him to come to his office. When Doyle refused, Leonard told him he would get a warrant for his arrest. Doyle stated he has not committed any crime, and in order to protect himself, he contacted News Channel TV 13 in Houston, who in turn made some inquiry into the sheriff's office, and he stated he has not been bothered further by anyone from the sheriff's office. Doyle described Martin as a white male, age 42, 6'2", 112 pounds. Talk about a soaking wet string bean pole. Good Lord. Blemishes on his face and several small scars, ruddy complexion. He stated Martin has a drinking problem and very seldom eats. Well, no shit if he's weighing 112 pounds. He stated also that Martin wears a Mason or Masonic ring, imagine that, on his left index finger. Doyle stated that he had come to Houston from Las Cruces, New Mexico to attend a horseshoeing school. He stated his parents reside in Las Cruces and that he enlisted in the U.S. Army in September of 1959 and that he received an undesirable discharge in May of 62 for psychiatric reasons. He went on to state that his psychiatric condition under which he was discharged is really not correct, inasmuch as he faked a psychotic condition in order to get out of the Army. Doyle stated he has since tried to re-enlist and tried to correct this black mark on his record. Doyle advises he was born in 1942, 5'10", 170 pounds, and stated he is leaving Houston with his wife on October 1st to live in Thermopolis, Wyoming. Thermopolis, Wyoming. On September the 14th, 1968, Mr. Nat Terrence and Jack Martin both telephonically contacted the special agent in charge of the FBI Houston and inquired as to whether or not Doyle had furnished any information to them. They requested information as to what information Doyle had furnished, if any, and stated that Doyle is a complete nut, and anything he says cannot be believed. Both Terrence and Martin advised that they would be glad to furnish any information to the FBI to clarify this matter. This document contains neither recommendations nor conclusions of the FBI. It is the property of the FBI and is loaned to your agency, and its contents are not to be distributed outside your agency. So, take Doyle's story for what you will. Okay? Is he a nut or not? Nut or not? And for whatever reason, Jim Garrison decided not to use Jack Martin in his pursuit of Clay Shaw uh, in the murder investigation of John F. Kennedy. Was it because he was an alcoholic? Was it because he was a nut? Or were there other reasons? I don't know. And many people that think that that's the end of the Jack Martin story, but it's not. In 1977, for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, our old friends, L.J. Delsa and Robert Burris, tracked our old friend down, Jack Martin, in Louisiana, still in New Orleans, and met with him at the Holiday Inn. So on December the 5th, 1977, investigators Robert Burris and L.J. Delsa met Jack S. Martin at his hotel located at 628 St. Charles Avenue. Mr. Martin brought us to the Paradise, not like a tropical paradise, but Pear dash A dash dice. Like you shaking your hand when you're playing a board game. Paradise Bar. These names, I love it. Located at Decatur and Benville Street in New Orleans, Martin stated, and we later confirmed that William Bill Little Horse Dalzell worked part-time at the Paradise Bar. Now, it was been put out there that William Bill Dalzell had CIA ties in the early 60s as well as Jack Martin. Yet they're still hanging around and they're still doing things there. The investigators and Jack Martin went to the Holiday Inn located at the 100th block of Royal Street and conducted an interview. Martin stated he had been in New Orleans since 55 or 56, and he was now separated from his wife, Paula, who worked in the city hall in New Orleans. Martin stated that he was a part-time investigator and a part-time writer. He served in World War II in the Air Corps and served many years in the Pacific, where he did a lot of radio work, including military intelligence work on ships out of Pearl Harbor. He was near Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941, when the Japanese attacked. He received an honorable discharge and is very anti-communist. He told the investigators about a letter from retired General Claire Chennault, which the investigators later read. The letter, General Chennault asked Martin to help him and a group of Americans that would work for General Chiang Kai-shek. They would use World War II fighters and capture ships going to mainland China and force them to port in Formosa. Martin stated that the plan fell through for lack of finances. Mr. Martin stated that he has worked as an investigator for or furnished information to the following people in New Orleans, such as Mayor Victor Chiro from 1960 to 68, Guy Bannister, a private investigator, Aaron Cohn of the Metropolitan Crime Commission, Jim Garrison, then District Attorney of New Orleans, G. Ray Gill Sr., a New Orleans attorney for Carlos Marcello. Mr. Martin stated he had been closely associated with people that the Select Committee might be interested in, such as David Ferry. Well, of course, he's dead, so they could be interested in him, but they can't interview him. David Ferry, he says, was an airline pilot for Eastern Airlines. He got fired because of homosexual problems. Ferry was a genius and an adventurer, and he was always luring young boys to him by his activities with the Civil Air Patrol, where he met Lee Harvey Oswald around 1955. Ferry knew a lot about guns and kept them around his apartment. Jack Martin had seen Oswald with Ferry in Guy Bannister's office located located at 531 Lafayette Street. On the day that President Kennedy was assassinated, Jack Martin saw a rifle on TV and remembered that he had seen one just like it in David Ferry's apartment. Martin called a friend that was an assistant DA, Herman Coleman, and told him about seeing Oswald with Ferry and about the gun, which we read about earlier. Jack Martin feels that this was the first call anyone made to the New Orleans district attorney, and as a result of that call, David Ferry's apartment was raided by special investigators of Jim Garrison. Ferry was later arrested and released. Jack Martin felt that the gun used might have belonged to Ferry, or he, Oswald, might have purchased the rifle from the same place that Ferry bought his. Martin stated that Ferry was very close to many Cubans and often wore army fatigues and allegedly trained with the Cubans. Ferry helped Sergio Arcacha Smith and made flights over Cuba, dropping supplies and possibly bombing runs. Some of the supplies that were dropped in Cuba came from the efforts of Bill William Dalzell, who helped Sergio Arcacha Smith get medical supplies when they were in the Balter building at the 400 block of Camp Street. Jack Martin stated that since he had made that first phone call back in 63, he has been a branded man. People no longer ask for his help, and his business contacts have gone down to zero. He feels that he is being unjustly harassed for trying to be helpful. On the same day of the phone call, 11/22/63, he was drinking in the Katzenjammer bar with Guy Bannister, and they got into an argument. They went to Bannister's office, and in the heat of the argument, Guy Bannister said something, and Martin replied, "What are you going to do? Kill me like you all did Kennedy?" Bannister drew his .357 Magnum and beat Martin in the head, which required medical attention but not serious. When Martin was on the ground, Bannister pointed the gun at his head, and he believes that Bannister would have killed him. One of the secretaries, Delphine Roberts, told Bannister not to shoot him. A police report was made, and Bannister paid all the medical bills, and Martin dropped the charges. Other people in the interest of the select committee were the following: Leighton Martins, now working at Leonard Crowder's jewelry store. Leighton Martins was a roommate of David Ferry and also wore combat fatigues and possibly trained with Cubans. Leighton Martins was seen at Guy Bannister's office many times, and for some time actually worked as an investigator for Bannister, Vernon Curtis, and Joseph Newborough. Carlos Quiroga was an associate of Arcacha Smith and was seen in 544 Camp Street a lot. Jack Martin gave him the idea of carrying a huge flag down Canal Street in a parade and having people throw dollars into it. The theme was paper bullets at Castro or something like that. Quiroga might still be in New Orleans. If not, he could be located by asking former Mayor Shiro, because he married a Shiro girl, and that was some type of relation to the mayor. Ronnie Clare was a Cuban trying to help the anti-Castro cause. He is presently on the Gulf Coast somewhere. Well, that narrows it down, Jack. Guy Johnson was an attorney that knew Bannister well and was with the Office of Naval Intelligence, which was located in the upstairs of the old post office in the 600 block of Camp Street, which was across the street from 544 Camp Street. Grady Durham was a lieutenant colonel in the service and an attorney that Jack Martin knew well from being around Guy Bannister. Grady Durham passed a few bad checks, and people were going to press charges against him. Jack Martin and Joseph Newborough went to the New Orleans coroner, Dr. Nick Chetta, and got warrants issued for mental incompetency. They took these papers to the DA's complaint desk and got the check charges killed as they came in. The Louisiana Bar Association knew about the charges, but Grady Durham is ex-Governor Jimmy Davis's first cousin, so nothing was ever done to him. FBI agent Regis Kennedy used to come around and was friendly with the people in Guy Bannister's office. Regis Kennedy also spent a lot of time north of Lake Pontchartrain by the Cuban training camps. Jack Martin talked to Regis Kennedy by phone from the apartment of Barbara Reed and had the conversation taped. Jack Martin claims that Regis Kennedy stated the information about Oswald and the anti-Castro Cubans would be taken care of or straightened out at a later date. Barbara Reed cannot find the tape, but does confirm that it was made. She is unsure of the contents of the tape. William Nietzsche was also a partner of Bannister. He had worked with Bannister in the Chicago office of the FBI and also in Butte, Montana. Nietzsche and Bannister handled the FBI Russian counterintelligence and also allegedly handled information from Russia over Alaska to Butte, Montana. Nietzsche later went to Michaud and worked as a security guard for Mason Rusk in NASA. Mary Bannister and Bill Nietzsche did not get along, and Jack Martin stated Nietzsche appeared to lead Bannister deeper into drinking problems. Martin believes that Michaud also had 3,200 interpreters doing some type of intelligence work at NASA. One of Bannister's short-term employees was a man named Earl Stawley, who also did some work in Michaud and in a firm believed to be the Jefferson Highway Company. This company checked out the electronics on the Polaris submarines for the military. Jack Martin identified the following people as intelligence agents with either the CIA or the DIA at one time or another: William Dalzell, Joseph Newborough, himself, but only for short periods and never officially. Mr. Martin appeared to let this slip out, and when pressed for more information, he would not elaborate. Mr. Jack Martin said that he saw the large cache of arms and ammunition in the back of 531 Lafayette Street. The boxes had DGSS on them, which stands for the French Intelligence Agency. The boxes were, quote, stolen by plan from the Schlumberger Company in Huma, Louisiana. David Ferry played a lead role in the movement of these arms. The boxes went to Guatemala for a revolution. Martin believes that Robert Kennedy was angry with the Guatemalan government for helping Carlos Marcelo get back into the country in 1961 or 62. And that was what Jack Martin said to Burris and Delsa in 1977. Surprised that that dude was still alive by then. But he said many of the same things that he'd been saying all the time. And of course, just like everyone else, their story evolves with time. Things get added, things get dropped. But all in all, the song remains the same. Continuing on with the theme of HSCA investigators, I always enjoy reading over their notes and their interviews of their interactions with suspects and notable names and things. So we jump over from New Orleans to Dallas in the year 1977 for a 10-day trip in September from the 19th to the 29th of investigators Jack Moriarty, Day, Maxwell, Brown, Kelly, Rose, and Daly. They were accompanied by Chief Investigator Cliff Fenton and Staff Counsel Klein. Monday, September 19th. Familiarized ourselves with the area, which incidentally is huge. By Wednesday, September the 21st, we were sufficiently familiar with the area to start checking times. For instance, Lee Harvey Oswald's route from 1026 Beckley, the bus stop in front of his house, to 10th and Patton. Walking time is 14 minutes, 30 seconds through the most expedient route. This particular area, by the way, is 1.4 miles, and it is in practically a straight line to where Jack Ruby was living at the time, which was otherwise known as 223 Ewing. The scene of the Tippit shooting is at 10th and Patton, is approximately halfway between Oswald's rooming house and Ruby's motel on Ewing. By this time, we are also familiar enough with Dealey Plaza in the downtown district, that is to say, where Ruby's carousel used to be, and we can now trace Oswald's steps on foot from the depository up Elm Street to where he boarded the bus, rode back down to Murphy, walked across Lamar to Commerce, where he caught a cab, and then proceeded by way of the Houston Street Viaduct into the Oak Cliff area. He had the driver let him off in the 700 block of Beckley, where he then walked up to 1026. Best estimates would be, with regard to time, approximately 12:55 p.m. It was during this few-minute interval that Oswald was inside 1026 Beckley that the police automobile designated as 207 or 270 stopped at the front and blew the horn and drove away. In any event, it's approximately 1 p.m. when Oswald left the rooming house, stood at the bus stop momentarily, and then allegedly proceeded on foot to the scene of the Tippit shooting. The 14.5-minute walk would put him at 10th and Patton at approximately 1:15 p.m. This evening, we have dinner with Mary Farrell and discuss the case for something like 6.5 hours. We find it's to our advantage to have the meetings at the scene, the Tippit shooting, as well as at Dealey Plaza. While at Dealey Plaza, we developed another potential witness in the form of Mr. Emmett Hudson, a white man about 70 years old who retired in 1972, living in the Oak Cliff area now, and he is receiving a pension check from the Parks and Rec Department of Dallas, Texas. We gleaned this information from the man who took his place, who is currently groundskeeper for this area. The next day, Thursday the 22nd, when we called the office this morning, we were read a 5-page memo by Purdy's secretary, Alice. It dealt with the mechanic who worked for Pate's Garage, who purportedly saw a suspicious man, possibly identified as Lee Harvey Oswald, sitting in a red automobile. We have since exploited this information to the PD in their checking. The records reveal that there was no such person ever a member of the Dallas PD. This information has been forwarded to the King side. Maxwell, Day, and myself located finally and interviewed with a tape recording Miss Johnny Maxie Witherspoon. This had been Officer Tippett's girlfriend in the area of 1960 to 63. We have a tape in which she basically indicates that they severed their relationship in the summer of June or July of 63. She had little to offer during this first visit, but we thought it was significant insomuch as we were the first people to ever talk to her about this particular matter. Kelly and Rose experienced the first meeting with Captain Fritz. They have 3 pages of notes. Basically, it was a good first meeting with apparently many more to come. The following day is the 25th, a Sunday. Day and I check out the Dobbs house. This is located at 1221 Beckley, now known as the Steak and Eggs. Investigation reveals this place is just a few blocks, 2 blocks, from 1026 Beckley, Oswald's last known rooming house. This is where he and Tippit were supposed to have made some kind of contact in November of 63. Mr. Henry White is the current city office manager for this large chain operation. We were unable to contact him on this trip. We intend to, with a view of locating the 2 waitresses who have some information on this matter. We then proceeded to the Hughes Funeral Home, determined the present whereabouts of the ambulance driver for the Tippit shooting, a Jasper Clayton Butler. He is now an official of this company and the manager of one of their other funeral homes, also located in Dallas on Webb Chapel Road. Extensive investigation revealed that Marie Thomas is now living at 3317 Shady Hollow Lane. Several trips in person were made to no avail. The lady was finally contacted on the phone, at which time she said she would return our call early the next morning in terms of developing an interview. She never returned the call. Subsequent call on our part indicated she had advised her children that she returned our call. We'll have to develop another approach on the next trip. I believe they're referring to Marie Tippit. They're the widow. Apparently she didn't want to talk to him. Located El Chico's, the rear of which is located Pate's Garage. We have a tape under the heading Mac Pate. We located 214 Neely Street. Determined the background for the controversial photographs of Oswald holding the rifle. Maxwell and Brown also interviewed James Jarman. They have a tape of that. Located him at the home address 6409 Tumble Creek Trail. Following day, Monday the 26th, we interviewed Austin Cook. male, white, 57 years old, of Waxahachie, Texas. He's the owner of Austin's Barbecue, located on Illinois Avenue in Dallas, Texas. Mr. Cook was interviewed at 2:30 on the 26th in one of the rear rooms of his restaurant, which is a local honky-tonk type place. It does serve good food, at which time he verified the fact that he had employed J.D. Tippett for 3 or 4 years. He worked Friday and Saturday nights from 10 or 11 o'clock till 2 or 3 o'clock in the mornings. He indicated most of the trouble around the place happened around midnight. Described Tippett as a fine police officer, and on occasion had overheard him telling rookies how to be cautious. Called to our attention the fact that Tippett had sustained what he called a war injury, which prevented him from looking you in the eye. No more information with regard to the eye injury. He did say that Tippett was also employed as a security officer at the local movie house known as Stevens Park. He added Tippett's regular beat was, quote, not around here, meaning the barbecue area. Mr. Cook did acknowledge that Mrs. Witherspoon was employed as a waitress at the same time Tippett was employed as a security officer, but he provided no further information about our relationship. If in fact they had a relationship going at the time, he claims he was not privy to it. He does mention Mr. Nix, the man who took some pictures of the Kennedy assassination. Hi, Gail. He called to our attention that Mr. Nix, who is a personal friend of his, now has a son who is a city councilman. That'd be your dad. The atmosphere that prevailed in this restaurant just did not seem conclusive to any kind of recording machine, but we talked for perhaps 30 minutes. My appointment had been originally at 3 o'clock, and we arrived a half hour early, but precisely at 3 o'clock, several other men entered this rear room and just sat down to our backs. We concluded the interview within a few minutes and left. Weird. Later that day, to proceed to 214 Neely Street, where we interviewed Malcolm George in the backyard of Neely. He identified himself as the landlord and had been in 1963. He had good reason to recall Lee Harvey Oswald and his wife Marina, and that he's been interviewed extensively on the matter. The only thing of interest Mr. George could recall was some of the neighbors had called him at home, indicating that the Oswalds were having a fight, that Mr. Oswald was in effect beating her up. He advised the people to call the police. He didn't take care of those matters. The following day, though, he and his wife did stop by the apartment and invited the Oswalds to attend church with them. Apparently, Lee Harvey Oswald declined, indicating that he belonged to another church. Subsequent conversation with Mr. George indicated that he did, in fact, have at his home. This is on the other side of town. Various records we might be interested in. We followed Mr. George to his home, whereby we made a tape with him that purports to recite the wording of an affidavit that was given to the Warren Commission in early '64. Following day, the 27th, we interviewed Irma Jean Van Zandt, Day Maxwell, and myself. This lady is a cousin of Jarman, one of the 3 men that were on the 5th floor of the depository. We recorded this interview, made in her home with her husband and large dog present. Significantly, she gave us her sister's name, Mary Hall, and subsequent conversation with her husband, who incidentally took Lee Harvey Oswald's place at the depository, reveals the name of Shields. This was a black co-worker of Oswald's in the book building, with whom he was extremely friendly. This was new information to us. So in addition to the tape, we have 2 witnesses in terms of Irma Jean Van Zandt and her husband, and 2 more in terms of Irma's sister and a Mr. Edward Shields. Now, just to pause there for a second, this does add a little credibility to old Edward Shields' comment, "Hey, where's your rider?" made to Beale Frazier on the morning of the 22nd. Interesting. If Shields and Oswald were friends, good friends. and I didn't know that Jarman's brother-in-law took Lee Oswald's place at the depository. Interesting. We then proceeded to the paint garage located in the back rear of El Chico's on 7th Street. This is just a few blocks south of 1026 Beckley. Mr. Pate was extremely reluctant to talk to us. He indicated the entire thing was somewhat of an inside joke as far as the business community of Dallas is concerned, and that they all know, it's common knowledge, that there's a Ruby Tippit Oswald conspiracy. Had been from the very beginning, compounded by the fact that several prospective witnesses met with untimely deaths. The combination of these circumstances prevented Mr. Pate from giving us much information in terms of detail. He did, however, recite the fact that his mechanic, Mr. White, died a natural death 3 years ago, who had been listening to the radio in his garage about 12:30 on the 22nd day of November in 1963. From 12:30 till perhaps 1:15, the radio was nothing but news about the assassination, and involved in this was some description in terms of a lookout of a red automobile. It just so happened that a red Falcon stopped out front, and a man, apparently the only occupant, seated behind the wheel, had what appeared to be clean clothing from the cleaners, hanging in the rear of the car. His curiosity was aroused, much like my penis. He walked out there to take a better look at the car and did jot the tag number down. The Texas tag number. The man drove away, crossing Beckley, which is at the corner of 7th Street where the shop's located. Before the elderly mechanic returned, as he saw the car disappear at the corner of 7th and Beckley, he also noticed a used car lot on the corner. Had attracted the attention of two plain automobiles who were apparently being utilized by several FBI men armed with long guns, either shotguns or machine guns. They stopped at the corner, took a man out of one of the cars, and put him on the ground and searched him. It developed that it was the owner of the lot, but he did resemble and had a strong resemblance to Lee Harvey Oswald. This was interesting in view of the fact that this was about 12:45 or 12:50, definitely before 1 o'clock, at least 15 minutes before allegedly before the Tippit shooting. Yet this is within 3 blocks of the Oswald rooming house located at 1026 Beckley. When Mr. Pate, Mr. White's employer, returned from lunch, Mr. White reiterated the facts, including his opinion that he wanted in no way to become involved because he didn't want those men jerking him out of an automobile and pointing those guns at him. Mr. Pate acquiesced, but he did mention it to a good friend of his who was a prominent person in TV media at the time, Wes Wise. Within a couple of days' time, Wise and Pate did manage to glean the tag number from the old man, and their subsequent check revealed that instead of a red Falcon being parked in the driveway where the tags were listed, the correct tags were in the driveway, but they now were attached to a gray or green Plymouth. This Plymouth turns out to be registered to a Carl Mathers, who is a personal friend of J.D. Tippit. This is interesting. The red Falcon or 4 we've heard about that from the testimony of the man driving the pickup truck Benavides at the Tippit shooting. We've heard about the gray Plymouth at the Tippit shooting from Frank and Mary Wright of 501 10th Street, and that's the corner of 10th and Denver. The following day, Wednesday the 28th, we canvassed the area of Beckley and 7th with Davis, the used car lots. There have been quite a few changes. We did manage to develop the fact that Don, as he's known, Benavides, had a brother, Eddie. Eddie was shot and killed a couple months after the assassination while he was on 2nd Avenue in a beer joint of lesser fame known as the Buy Fair Park. According to the man on the used car lot, he was just entering when 2 men in business suits, he claimed, was the first time anybody wearing business suits ever entered this joint, had walked in earlier, and one of the 2 men was armed with a shotgun and shot Eddie Benavides in the face and then left in a 61 or 62 4-door sedan, white in color, with Iowa or Ohio tags. He described them as two white men. Other than the business suits and the shotgun, there were no further descriptions. He added that Don is now somewhere in California. His line of endeavor has been described as an auto body man. We interviewed people in all the used car lots, perhaps a half a dozen in this particular area. And ultimately, we located Leo Holmes, who has the Holmes lot on Davis Street and who did remember incidents about that time. But he claimed the man we were looking for was Phineas Holmes. Subsequent investigation revealed that Phineas is very elderly and sick. We were able to contact him on the telephone only. We were invited not to visit his home, at which time he vaguely remembered the incident with the FBI and the shotguns, but declined to discuss it, indicating he was too sick and under no circumstances did he want to talk about this matter. All things considered, we decided not to pursue it. We then met en masse at the schoolbook depository. A Mr. William Smith of the Department of Public Works met us there with a key to the front door, and we were allowed to examine at our leisure the entire premises, at which time we made pertinent notes and took several photographs. The one timing incident was a man running from the, I'll say, Oswald window down to the lunchroom on the second floor. This time could be done in 46 seconds using the stairway. Tape made by Jack Moriarty. So there you have it, folks. Another intriguing trip by the HSCA to Dallas, brought to you by the inevitable Jack Moriarty. So, very interesting stuff there, and very interesting stuff having to do with Jack Martin. What's it all mean? I have no earthly idea. No earthly idea. But it's got to mean something. You know, maybe someday we'll know. Maybe someday we'll know. And stick around. After this song is over, you will hear the Jim Garrison, Jack Martin interview. For more, follow along on Twitter at The Lone Gunman 7, on YouTube, The Lone Gunman Podcast channel. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell to get notified when a new episode drops, if that's how you choose to listen. Until next time, it's your boy. Peace.
Damage at your core will never die. Garrison. This is Wednesday, December 14th, 1966. I'm getting ready to have an interview with Jack Martin about David Ferry. Pick pretty well because he was so blasé about it. I felt that this fellow Ferry is a very interesting person and they're looking into, and from what Pershing tells me, you seem to have that attitude too. And
Well, I told Pershing
I think Pershing missing a bet when he treats it so casually.
Well, I told Pershing this. I have to qualify what statements I make. This man, I've got no love for him, so any statement I make will be in prejudice.
Well, you might be able to give us some good leads, and that's what I'm very interested in.
Well, that's what I came with this morning.
Unusual circumstance, and I have the impression that we got a lead on him before, you see, and sent the bureau to him right after the president was killed, and the FBI by then had decided it was Oswald, and their ears were closed, you know.
Well, sir, can I tell you who gave you that lead?
I know where originally came from.
Herman
Yeah.
Coleman. Now, Herman Coleman was the young reporter that wrote the story on things when he was first hit out.
Right, and so he knows something about it. But what happened, apparently, at the bureau never followed it up, really, or else they discounted it.
That's right.
Well,
They figured I was a nut.
They must have figured something on because you cannot discount that easily. The man,
Well, you know this nigger, this splendid nigger, this young buck nigger that's working for Perry now at the airport as a mechanic or something?
I'm interested in Barry and Brownlee. And their connection with
Let me
Oswald.
clue you on something now. This nigger has been driving, young nigger has been driving Dave Perry around for a long time. He's back to Roger Perry. He's back in a 38 revolver about anything. All the time I
He carries a revolver?
That's right. This nigger's been packing a revolver.
He's a bad boy.
No, he was picked up. All the time he's with Dave, he carries a gun. Now, he was picked up one time on Orange Street, I believe.
In other words, Barry has a bodyguard?
Yeah, he was arrested, yeah.
I mean, this fellow's still a bodyguard, huh?
Evidently. Now, this nigger claims to be a mechanic for Perry. Now, let me clue you on this
What's
guy.
his name?
I've forgotten.
Okay.
I think it was Philip or something like that. I've forgotten. It was either his first or last name was Philip. I've forgotten. But now, this nigger.
You don't mind to make a few
No,
notes?
go ahead. Make a tape recording.
Go ahead. No, I don't. I just want
This nigga, let me tell you, he's a clean-cut looking nigga. He's sharp. And maybe a bit illiterate, but he's sharp. This guy was packing a lot for Perry. He was driving around quite often, always in the car with Perry. This nigga was in Texas with Perry, but Perry was in Texas just before and probably during the assassination of
All right, let me get that. He was in Texas?
That's right, so I understand, because he went everywhere with Perry. He flew with Perry, in that Stinson voice.
Well, now we know that this fellow Brownlee went, but he's not the Negro.
Well, now this
We have heard from him.
anywhere that Perry and Brownlee went, this nigga was there too.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
There may have been three of them then.
that's right.
How do you know this Negro was there?
I just know it. He went everywhere with Perry. Now, this nigger could have been the same nigger that they saw in the book depository.
In the window.
That's right. Now, I've often thought of that.
What does he look, what's his hair like?
He's a dark Negro. His hair used to be combed all the time, cut short.
It's short?
Yeah. Now look, before Perry got his case killed over here, before Khrushchev, this kid was had in charge of the crime of this nature, came back out of the service. Just before he got back.
The crime against nature case was in Jefferson.
That's right. And intimidating the state's witnesses was in Orleans.
Right, and he must have worked something out because all of the victims, I remember that case, because all of the victims
Khrushchev
came in.
withdrew his case.
That's right.
He came back out of the service at Murray and contacted Perry, and he says, no, I'm not a minor anymore. I want to get this off your back.
Right, so the New Orleans case.
Perry paid him off.
No, the piece.
Perry paid him off.
Now, what happened in Jefferson, I don't know. That was a real case.
Anyway, sir, what happened was, just before then, this Negro got in jail here in New Orleans on a pickup on loitering or vagrancy or something. They went before Babylon. And Perry came to my house. He was arrested on Orleans Avenue. And he'd been sitting in jail 3 days before they allowed him to use the phone. And Perry got a hold of me and came over to my house and got a hold of me, and I...
He was arrested just before Barry's New Orleans case was dropped?
Yeah.
That was in 1968.
The Jefferson case, just before the Jefferson. About the time Khrushchev came back in town, that's the guy that had charged.
Just before the Jefferson case was dropped.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be about January 63.
Somewhere around there. Anyway, this nigger turned around and was in jail, and Perry came to my house, and I talked to Judge Babylon, and told Judge Babylon that I knew the nigger, that he was an employee of Dr. Perry who owned an airplane at New Orleans Airport, and he was an airplane mechanic. In fact, Judge Babylon released him as a favor to him. Now, I'll tell you.
So they probably have a mug of it.
They may have, yes, sir. Now, unfortunately, Jim, I figured Dave Perry was dead and buried or something, you know? Unfortunately, here, about the time that he got in trouble here locally, and it was just before the assassination of Kennedy, there was a guy working in the case of Dave Perry. He's trying to pull Dave Perry's pilot's license because of these activities.
You mean working for Eastern Airlines?
No, this guy is better than that.
Oh, really?
This guy's trying to pull his pilot's license, yes, sir. This man is in Washington. Now, when I was back in Washington, before I had a heart attack, I visited this man up there, and we had lunch together. He and a couple of FBI buddies of his. This man is a former bureau man. He's a good friend of Aaron Cohen. He knew Cohen in the bureau, and now he's with he's either the chief or the assistant chief of the Office of Compliance and Security of the FAA.
What's his name?
Richard E. Dick Roby.
Washington, D.C.
Richard E. Roby. R-O-E-D-Y. No, R-O-B-E-Y, I beg your pardon. He's damn bifocals. They shut on a certain line and
What's his title?
he's an investigator, Office of Compliance and Security. Federal Aviation Authority. It flies all over the country.
Okay.
Now, his telephone number is ST 3-2100. Extension 4524. Now, he's got a residence phone in Silver Springs, Maryland. That's right outside.
Yeah, I know where it is.
All right. And he's got a residence phone.
All right.
Now, because of the fact that Dick Roby had a personal vendetta for some reason against Dave Perry, I sent all my files to Dick Roby. I even had notes in there where Dave Perry had sat down and showed my wife various formulas in calculus and high mathematics and how to construct, by using lithium hydride or lithium and boron hydride, and how to construct an atomic bomb using magnetic fields. Yeah.
The bomb was made public? I mean, the last few years been made public.
No, it's not. She did bombard through magnetic fields. It's never been made public.
Well, the general makeup of the atomic bomb has, but you mean something
Well, this is something that Perry cooked up, and it might even work. It's highly plausible, because I had some guys look at it. No. I had these all these notes.
How do you describe it specifically?
Well, by using lithium, L-I-T-H-U-M.
Yeah.
Lithium
How
hydride.
do you know that?
And in other words, you don't have to use like the hard water fish, the heavy water fish. You don't have to use the heavy water fish. You bombard your magnetic fields. And I looked at this in the gel because even through the descriptions of the mechanical setup on this thing, I kept these notes. Now I have these attached to my other papers, and I sent them to Dick Roby to help him with this case because I figured my connection with Dave Perry was through. You understand? Now he's probably got him in the Dave Perry file. Then when Dave was arrested here in New Orleans, I also sent him to this article stuff in.
Well, let me ask you this. If I write it, he may send them to me.
Yes.
What's your home address? And I'll put a copy of it to you.
1836 and a half, that's what it is.
And then I'll put a copy of it to you so he can check with you for permission.
Yes.
And that way
That's all right.
it.
You type a little statement, and I'll put a note in there or anything, and I'll say, that complete release system. This is Jim Garrison with my
And what's your phone number?
943-6949.
Sperry. I think
Right.
that we have something here. If we keep it quiet, we're looking into
All right,
it.
now,
I think
Perry
that's-
had typed me an outline on the case, what he claimed happened, and the discrepancies between the police department and his story and what these people had done to him. Every detail, allegedly, his side of the story was in this brief. Attached to the brief was an appendix, an index, naming the times, the places, just like you run footnotes on a technical record. See, you put them in the back of the book. This is a separate paper that gave the names, addresses, and phone
Is
numbers.
that organized?
Yeah, he was that organized. He does everything. He hits a blackboard. He does it by anesthesia and logic. This man's no fool, and you're going to see flying on it.
He seems to be a very unusual person.
No, unusual. You see those books you got back there? He's got about a half a shelf full of Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. He reads all of them. That guy can crack the
Where did he lose his hair?
Whatever. He can crack it, I'll tell you that. He can crack the octa bust out of the saddles. That's the letters of book. You're like this. And on this day of so-and-so, you think he's reading English, you look over his shoulder, he's reading cold turkey Latin.
It's remarkable.
No.
I have such proficiency as a pilot as well.
No. Let me clue you where he learned all that. I have heard the story that Barry was a priest at one time. And he left the church in grace. If he did that, even if he left the church in grace, he can still take communion. He can become a layman, but he can't ever marry.
That's interesting.
Now, there's a lot of guys walking loose that have left the church in grace, but they can't marry. Now, there were some provisions made by some European bishops where priests left the church in grace and were able to marry.
A special situation.
That's right.
You think he might have been a legitimate priest?
Wait a minute, he was Roman Catholic, I'm going to tell you. Now, Barry's father was a lawyer with the police department in Cincinnati, Ohio. You know about this?
No, I just know he's from Cincinnati.
All right.
Well,
Barry's mother and I were very good friends, and she used to sit and shake her head all the time. Now, she was a devout Catholic. She used to burn a candle 24 hours a day to the Holy Virgin in the house. Now, Barry had a bunch of missionary priest stuff up there in his house, vestments and everything. The only place you get those, this is strictly issue stuff. I've seen this stuff before. I know. I've been around seminaries. In fact, when I travel out of town, you know where I usually stay? In the rectories. I know some few people in the church
this
myself.
is very interesting. That might account for his unusual background.
Let me clue you on something. Barry got a legitimate bachelor's degree and then went to the seminary. He was a priest in the precious blood bonds. That order of the precious blood, you know?
It's a legitimate Catholic organization.
That's right. Now, he left in grace. Now, I was talking to his mother. Now, Dick Roby had inquisited me on this. And I said I didn't know. So one day I called Barry. This is when he was leaving on Athenia Drive in Memphis. I called Dave on this, on something, and his mom answered the phone. It wasn't the phone. I got talking, and she was mad. She says, I don't know what I'm going to do with this boy. So I'd rather be dead. I'd rather not see this. Jack, I read with. She's a lovely little place. She was scared to death of her.
Why was he such a disappointment? Why was he scared?
Look, I have seen Perry take that pistol and shout, kill them all, they come and get me under my barn. He does it dirty. Talk to my wife about this. She'll tell you. We went over there one Christmas, and he was dancing around with an old 3 rifle, just like the one that killed Oswald. He had about 5 or 6 of them up there. In fact, well, that's where Lee Harvey Oswald learned how to order those damn things from Perry. All right. So
What was he talking about killing?
his bondsmen, if he'd go off his bond, his crooks in Jefferson, he said, kill all cops. I mean, insane stuff, and he was sober. I'll tell you who else witnessed this. My wife, and there was a woman, no relation to us, Mrs. Martins, M-A-R-T-I-N-S. Now, if you remember correctly, when Perry was arrested...
Mrs. Martin, what about her? You witnessed it?
Yeah.
M-A-R-T-E-N-S?
M-A-R-T-I-N-S.
Martins or Martin?
Martins, M-A-R-T-I-N-S.
All right.
All right. Now, you remember when Perry was arrested by your people there on this charge on the Kennedy Bedford investigation? All right, so there was a
March 25th.
There was a Martin's boy in the bunch that they took in.
Oh, I see.
That's her son. That is his protege. He got that kid a couple of college scholarships. I can never figure out whether Barry was fucking the boy's mother or the kid.
Well, both.
Both. All she was trying to marry this guy. And at that time, she had some stuff that was advantageous for him to marry her. He says, Jack, I can't. He kept on. He couldn't. Not that he wouldn't, but he couldn't. Now, Mrs. Martins lives, at that time, she lived at 606 Nashville.
Was she attractive?
She wasn't a bad looking woman. She was in her 30s, I think, 30s or so.
Very interesting. Go ahead.
She wasn't what you'd call an ugly woman by any means, but she wasn't, she was winning any failing beauty contests. She wouldn't project any extreme sex in the morning.
Yeah.
But she was this Martin boy's mother. Now, this Martin boy's a nice looking kid. But I had a phone number, but her phone number no longer exists.
That's all right.
But this is the address I have. All right. Anyway, so I got Mrs. Barry on the phone.
Would you like some coffee?
If you want some,
I got time. She said I get so many calls on my inside line, I throw the phone away.
Anyway, sir, at this time, pardon me for being so impolite. I don't think about it. At this time, see, I get the old lady on the phone, Bernie's mother. And I said, this is Bernie. She says, what do you mean? She says, this, I want you to go to Jack. We're working hard for this boy. I was trying to prove the guy innocent. I halfway believed him. And so, but I had told Sidell Alberta, the sheriff's office, I said, I find this guy. I says, well, I think I'm going to tell you, Sidell Alberta was one of my boys at the sheriff's office in those days, you know. Like the business book. So I told the major, I said, look, if I can't just pass the line, I'm going to give you a full report on it. I won't take this. If the guy's telling the truth, I wouldn't do it. Because I didn't get that much commission from over there. I wouldn't do anything to hurt the sheriff.
Go ahead, tell me more about him, though.
Well, anyway, this mother tells me, she says, I said, she got to tell me, she said, when he was in the priesthood, he was never like this. I said, do you mean to tell me, Mrs. Ferry, that he was formerly a priest? She said, yes. I said, what order was he in? The precious blood fraud. I said, jive with what Ruby had said. You understand? So, now this captain, what's his name, at Eastern Airline, that was fighting Ferry's case with the HSCA Airline Pilot Association at that time, and got him on suspension. Son was a Jesuit, see? This captain's son was a Jesuit. And I was wondering why Captain Griner, that was his name. I wondered why Captain Griner was so vehemently against Ferry, see? And Captain Griner had told me that Ferry was a former clergyman. He'd been defrocked.
Well,
so anyway, let me tell you this now. So I called Ferry up later that evening, and I called Ferry and I told him, Dave, I said, I find out where this priest is, because this was hurting him with his case against the airline. They claimed that he had a dual vocation to go back to the priesthood. They could have no airline pilots. They used this to hang their hat on, see? And I said, I found out where this priest stuff came from. It came from your mother. I said, come on over. He came over and I told him. I wouldn't tell him on the phone. Because Ferry's got a violent temper and I was afraid of what he might do. You might get this cat on the murder charge yet.
Let me get some coffee. How would you like yours, Jack?
A little cream, a little sugar.
You want a little cream, a little sugar, and I'll take none of this cream.
All right. He comes over, it's about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening, and I tell him this. He turns mad, he turns white. And he goes like this. He jumps in the car with a nigger and he take off. His mother left that night, so he says for Philadelphia.
He said, I'll kill her?
Yeah, that's right. He says, I'll kill her. I'd kill her. I thought this is where it was coming from. People are calling the house and she's talking. He jumped in the car with this nigger and he took off. Next thing I called, there was no answer. I called later, pretty soon he answered the phone. I said, where's your mother? He says, I sent her back to Philadelphia last night. My father. Philadelphia, that's what he said, or Pennsylvania.
Just a sec. You know Jack, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's the one.
Jack's giving us some interesting background on this fellow Ferry.
anyway, Mr. Garrison, I said, you mean you sent your mother back this quick to Philadelphia? He says, yeah. 2 weeks later, Barry takes off and went back east there to Pennsylvania or someplace back in there, I'll tell you, Pittsburgh, wherever it was. Allegedly, his mother was replaced, but 2 weeks later, he takes back, goes back to bury his mother. She quickly died, we'll put it like that. Now, Barry is a very brilliant man, and he's capable.
She died before he went back.
Yeah. Or whether she did or not, I don't know. She was sick, that was it. She was sick, and he had to go back, and while he was back there, she died. Now, this guy had bragged openly to me. He said, well, he says, you can always poison by apoptosis. Now, apoptosis is a system of poisoning where you can lay something on the skin, a certain culture, and it will penetrate to the outside tissues of the skin and go inside and kill you. There's a lot of ways to kill a guy. There's a lot of ways to kill a guy without showing an eye. Doctors are not infallible, not even the best of toxicologists.
Let's try and get to where it connects with Oswald. That's what I understand.
Well,
I mean, it's good to know, but
yeah.
Oswald, when did you see him at Oswald?
Well, at Bannister's one time, Curry used to come at Bannister's. Now, this is after I had met...
no, but you saw him at Oswald several times.
Yeah. I was supposed to be once, twice, man. All right. This kid, Oswald, at that time, was just an unapplied-headed kid running around. He had a lot of them around him. Every time you see Barry, he had a whole bunch of these kids with him.
This was in 63?
62, 63, back in there somewhere. I couldn't pinpoint. That's when he was in all his trouble, see? All right.
Every 63.
All right. Now, let me tell you, give you the tie-in with Oswald was Barry from New York. As you know, when Barry was in his jam, one of his defense mechanisms that he came up with was that he was a CAP squadron commander. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
All right. Yet the CAP, he says the squadron didn't exist. Well, anyway, he had this raft of guns and stuff. Now, when I met, and he was training these kids in commando stuff, so he had a raft of pictures. He'd take these kids out of their cabins, and I understand he still got these pictures. They gave about 10 photographs of these kids in combat uniform and their rifles and stuff, and they're out doing cookouts and stuff, see? Whether that's a function of the CAP or not, I don't know, but it was David Perry's way of handling things.
He's still connected with it some way.
No, wait a minute. He filed a charter. He learned how to join corporations when he went with Gill. And he filed a charter. I saw him in the mortgage office one day after he was with Gill, and he filed a corporate charter to stay on the state of Louisiana. It says the Civil Air Patrol and Space Cadets.
So that would be since 63.
Well, down in there, you'll find it up there in the mortgage office under nonprofit charters. As I saw the charter in Ruffin in Gill's office. And in fact, he used to use Gill's notary seal and sign Gill's name as good as he could.
Well, this isn't really a CAP outfit, it's just...
hell no, it's his own concoction. See, any people on a nonprofit institution can incorporate. Well, anyway, in these pictures, he had this guy, Khrushchev, and everybody else. All his cadets. I'll bet you, if you go up there on Louisiana Avenue, where Ferry used to live, he's still living there on the second floor apartment.
Still lives.
Huh?
He's still there.
All right. You go up there, you get a hold of a bunch of these old pictures, you're going to find Oswald's picture.
And Oswald was with his group?
That's right. Dave Ferry introduced me to him in Bannister's office. He says, this is Lee Oswald. He says, he used to be in my CAP squadron when he was a little kid.
I see. In an earlier group then.
That's right, see? And he had pictures of all these cats. You go up there and go through those pictures, you're going to be enlightened.
Now, let's see. In this time of 63, you went to John Bannister's office. Was that his little
I
office?
was sitting in there, no, it was in Lafayette Street.
That was the
531 Lafayette.
Baltic building?
No, 531 Lafayette Street, on the side of the old post office building there, right back of the Inclusive's Cafe.
Oh, Double Master?
Yeah, the Planet, it's an advertising agency.
What Lafayette?
531. It had a big black door there.
Right across from Lafayette.
Yeah, that's in that small office, that's small.
He started off with a fair
He had his front foyer office, which is bigger than your inner office, and he had two smaller offices off to the side of that, and he had another little alcove in there with a crack in it and a storeroom. He goes, a pretty good sized little place.
Who else was there besides Oswald?
Oh, Ferry and a bunch of kids come in.
Oswald and Ferry.
Well, Ferry and a bunch of young fellas come in. And Ferry had one of these officer's petite hats on, like they were a cut man, you know, and he had a pair of dark glasses and his mohair sticking down like. I thought he was one of the Cubans. In fact, the concha was with a birthday, see? The Cuban birthday.
Oh, you mean like the Castro type of hat?
Yeah, that's the good one, yeah.
And so anyway, decapping youngsters, and how old were they?
Oh, it range anywhere from 17 to 21, maybe, something like that.
And where was Oswald?
Well, he was with this bunch because one of the guys, he said, this is Lee Oswald. He's a friend of mine. Well, I was sitting there, and I don't think anybody was in the office. Miss Roberts, she wasn't even working there.
All right, roughly how many?
Bannister was in talking to some people, and these guys came in to see Bannister.
Roughly how many kids was Perry?
I'll say 3 or 4, including a Kacha and this guy, Oswald and Perry, and there was a couple of other guys with me.
Kacha, who was that?
Sergio Kacha, S-E-R-G-I-O.
How old was he?
A-C-H-C-A. Well, I'll give you a rough illustration. Sergio Kacha was in with the Cuban diplomatic corps under the Fulgencio Batista regime. He was a PhD at Columbia University.
Beautiful, just a minute, not so fast. That interests me. What was he with Batista?
He was with the Cuban diplomatic corps. He's been all over. He was a PhD at Columbia University.
Do you mean to say that the FBI didn't show any interest in things like this? Well, I'm interested.
Well, anyway, now Sergio was with Columbia, graduated Columbia University, had PG work at Georgetown University.
Did he dress in fatigues?
Oh, no.
He was with them, though.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was some kind of uniform.
Sergio is the type of guy that you're dealing with class.
But he came in with them, nevertheless.
Oh, yeah. You see, Perry was helping the Cubans in those days, apparently. Yep, they didn't trust him.
He was helping these, what you might call, the loyalists.
The Front against Castro, the anti-Castro people. They call it the Front. It was the Cubano, the Cuban Democratic Revolutionary Front. The Cuban Democratic Revolutionary Front.
Is that it?
That's it. It was first in the ball building. That was the first office, which I got the office for him.
Cuban Democratic what?
Revolutionary Front. I got Colonel Ball. I thought the ball and get off.
Just a second. He was in the Baltimore. They were in the Baltimore building at that time?
That's right.
Colonel Baltimore. Remember that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
And from there, he went down to the Newman building. On the 500 block of campus.
Acacho's out there.
Yeah.
Was Acacho the head of it?
At that time, yeah. Sergio Acacha and Carlos Carrega. He spelled his name. He's still here in the law just the time. He's married to a girl that's related to Fitzgerald. This guy is a pretty man too. Carlos, C-A-R-L-O-S, Carrega. Q-U-I-R-O-G-A.
U-I-R-O-G-A.
Yeah.
Quiroga.
Yeah, he lives at 3134 Beverly Place. Derby, D-E-R-B-Y.
Oh, that is the great side.
Telephone number is 945-5524. Carlos Carroga's father is defined. He's still in the panel with that. And he's not dead yet. Carlos is feminine against Catholic. Carlos hated very good fashion.
Just a second. Let me write this down. Quiroga's father is still a prisoner of Castro?
Yes, sir. He's in a fine son.
Why would he hate Perry? Perry was helping him.
He's a body that's a weird fact. Now, Carlos Carrega is an electronic engineer. He's an electronics specialist. This guy is he's a very brilliant kid. I don't think so.
They were bored with this league, weren't they?
I don't know. I don't know whether they were or not.
Well, I talked to them a little, and they didn't seem interested in anything that didn't support Oswald as being the only man. They're almost as if they just wanted to
Who likes to work?
Huh?
Who likes to work?
I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, well, anyway, Kennedy was thinking that, and he's not interested too much. He was just got his foot to the guy, and
things here. Tell us more about this.
Well, anyway, Carlos Quiroga and Concha ran the birthday as a joint operation. Sergio is
It's still in operation.
yeah, no, Sergio is in New York somewhere. He was working for Ronnie Care Advertising Agency was the last job he had, and he left there and went to New York. Correga and Sergio Concha and Dr. Cordona, and in the spirit of the chief of police, given police under Lieutenant Batista was living there, were all good friends.
Who's Dr. Goodhome?
Dr. Cordona, if there were a president of Free City, he might be it. He's in Washington. And they were all over the dynasty.
He's a real top man.
Yeah, that's right. One of them.
Was he bastard on that day?
Not that particular day, but I'm just giving you an illustration. All these guys. But what happened was Cordona and some of the top officials, the coordinators for the Cuban government outside Cuba, had appointed Sergio Acacia and Carlos Correga as the delegates of the front day here for the New Orleans and Baton Rouge area.
You mentioned one other fellow after Dr. Cordona that was connected with Batista.
Oh, there was this colonel.
Colonel
I don't know. He's moved now. But I'm going to give you a guy's name and his unlisted phone number. There's no way to check this guy out.
Cuban colonel.
Yeah, this guy, I talked to him last night. He says, feel free to use my name and I will gladly talk to any police official.
What does he know?
He doesn't know anything about Ferry, but he can give you the people that's there. This guy's name is Ravel. Louis Ravel, and you spell it like R-E-V-E-L.
L-U-I-S?
L-U-I-S, yeah.
And what's the last name?
Ravel.
R-A-V-E-L?
Yeah.
Where is he?
288-7905.
In New Orleans?
That's it. That's all.
And he will give us information on Ferry?
Yeah. Well, he says he never knew Ferry, but he says he will put you next to any Cubans in the pit. Now, he told me that Carlos Correga would be the only guy that he would recommend that knew very well.
Well, now, what's Ravel's position? Is he a part of this operation or is he
Ravel is now he's now taking care of a lot of the Cubans, and he's also monitoring the broadcast over there. He's only a little bit on shooting people over there doing sabotage right now.
And he wouldn't be negative about giving us...
No, he worked with the police.
All right.
Anything American. I told him, I said, no, this guy that was interested in some of the operations at that time and some of the people involved, specifically Dave Ferry.
Okay.
I said, is an official investigator? I said, no. He said, well, the police are investigating. I'd rather talk to them with all the cooperation you want.
What's Oswald's connection with this outfit?
Well, this is a funny thing. The Cubans never trusted Ferry, and I'll tell you why. Have you ever studied the psychological pattern of radicals in any way? Those people who profess the electric philosophy. You notice, we'll use your good friend Leanna Perez as an illustration. Here is a man that's an extreme segregationist. He's an extreme conservative. At the same time, he's an extreme anarchist. Now, you've got your liberals too. But at the same time, most people are liberal about communism and socialism. Never do you find a guy that split trails. This guy, he doesn't form a good pattern. It doesn't match up.
Oh, you mean Ferry?
Ferry.
Oh, well, I agree.
Ferry is an extreme anti-communist, but yet again, I've heard him say this about the riots and any riots or racial disturbances. They ought to kill all white people or anything treated. Now, this guy was pro-Kennedy. He worshipped him like God.
Then he says they ought to kill what?
He says they ought to kill all the white people and oppose integration. In other words, but he claims to be pro-Kennedy. He worshipped Kennedy according to him, the way he preached about Kennedy. He worshipped him like God. At the same time, he's better than the anarchist. Well, that doesn't fit into the pattern. Now, if you remember correctly, even prior to this trouble over Jefferson Parish and Orleans Parish, Ferry appeared at the Roosevelt, I believe it was, at one of the large hotels here, and even drew the Darling matter on. You remember this?
No.
Oh, yes, sir. He exposed Darling as being a red. And he did. He talked about, he mentioned some pretty strong, he spoke pretty strongly, certainly about the communists. He spoke openly. Now, you take some of the biggest communist workers, cell members, are anti-communists.
was doing
I was
with these
having,
people?
you see, I know Sergio, I don't want to go into how I know him or why, but if you remember this, I'll start here. Of course, this is off the subject, but I want to start at the beginning so you understand my position. I'm not holding anything
Well,
back.
here, let me suggest this. We can get into these other aspects. I mentioned it later, but I'd rather get to the housing part
I
first.
knew Barry before this. I was in the St. Charles Hotel shortly after the Havana problem. And I was sitting in the Ninth and Fourth, a little coffee shop in there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a friend of mine, and a coach had come in with a lawyer who's no longer here in this country, as far as I know. And I was introduced, the lawyer left, this other friend of mine had left, and I was sitting there talking to Coach, and they started coming in, and he was listening to Dave Curtis before I knew he was in any trouble or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they were using Dave for props for his airplane. They were using him in his plane.
Let me make that note.
Yes. Yeah. He says, I don't trust this bastard. Watch out, don't say too much, you know.
In other words, he would take the plane and go to Cuba and they land somebody on the beach or pick somebody up.
He'd fly from Miami and he'd give him his plane to a Cuban to fly. He wouldn't fly himself. Not sure they would. He's very afraid to die.
Yeah.
That's, he's scared.
In other words, he wouldn't expose himself to the
That's
outside.
right. He's got to yell. I wasn't on my house.
Well, if he's afraid to die, it's rather unusual. Why is he such a hound for guns? So possibly
That's one of the symptoms, I guess. I don't know.
That's right. But in other words, he was working with him and his plane was available. He delivered
That's
the
right.
plane.
They were using it for it. He said, be careful with this bastard. I don't trust
They
him.
paid him as a mercenary.
Oh, that's right. You know, we should just be careful with this guy. I don't trust him. Now, Carlos Correa don't trust him at all. He was good.
Pastor did not trust him?
Sergio didn't trust him. So, no. You know how the Spanish are? They were using the Spanish name like Acacia, Sergio Acacia Smith. But Smith was his mother, but he's known as Sergio Acacia Smith. This is how. You know, they use it now, they use it everything after this.
Oh, I see. They do. Is that what that's happening for?
Yeah. Well, anyway, so that's when I first met Barry, and then I met Barry again in Vance's office a couple of times.
In other words, you actually met Perry with this student group.
That's right, yeah. Because shortly afterwards, see, I got old Darzell, I got Brady Burns to incorporate that group for Dr. Darzell, for Friends of Free Democratic Cuba, and they put a bunch of them up over there on Camp Street that time, on St. Charles at the time and stuff, you know. And Perry would come in over there. Now, on 3 occasions, I know the fact that Perry turned around and flew Cubans to Miami. And on one occasion, he loaned his airplane to 2 Cubans to use, and that was one time they dropped some guns, because they also buy guns right here in the wall. Now, I'll tell you how far back. I will tell you how I met a cop. When you check with Bill Reed, and you get a hold of Big Randall, used to be with WWL, and Jack Hammerman at that time, we'll find out the night Havana fell. I was the guy with guards. Havana on the phone, so Bill Reed could interview. I was trying to get the Del Castro himself. I got lost.
When Havana fell.
The night Havana fell. Remember they
You
interviewed
mean
Harry?
Ernie Castro came in?
No, the night Havana fell.
Well, you mean Castro arrived?
That's right. That's right.
They caved in, kind of. It looked like, well, it didn't look like they were going to make that much progress, and suddenly it caved in.
That's right. Now remember the night Havana fell on the 10:30 news. Bill Reed had this deal where he interviewed Harry Allen, the Associated Press in Havana. That was the first release CBS got out of Havana, the night Havana fell. Well, I had been trying since 7:30, and I had a defensive priority on a call through Washington. I got through. I had Raw Castro on the phone, on the command post. You could hear the bullets ricocheting off the buildings. And I mean, they were listening. It was a conference.
Where were you?
I was at my house in Brevard. We had a conference call set up.
All right.
All right, we got 2 lines of WWL. One of them, the tape was on, and the other, Bill Reed was on. Raw can't speak English. Hardly speak English. So Bill couldn't talk to him. So we switched off, and we got Harry Allen of the Associated Press, and interviewed Harry Allen of the Associated Press out of one of the radio stations. And the operator just happened and said, well, there's a man here, Harry Allen, an American, a correspondent with AT trying to get on. And Bill said, put him on because we got AT subsidy. And that, I got the call through for him.
Let me ask you, if we can get back to what must have
Well, I had some connections with the old group, because we didn't know at that time Castro was a communist.
Yeah.
The Weavers.
So it wasn't clear till later. Let me
That's
ask you
right.
about the hospital. What
So
was the hospital?
naturally, I was aware of the contact when they moved in. Now, so later, over at Bannis's, this cat comes in, and this is Lee Oswald. He's a friend of mine. He's with the CAP.
How was Lee Oswald dressed?
I don't know. They were all dressed in sport clothes. I
The
couldn't.
only one in a kind of uniform was Barry, at least with a hat, huh?
Yeah, he had almost a Castro rig, you know. He had a, yeah. Well, anyway.
Did the kids have anything else besides civilians?
I still remember you just having kids' sport clothes, typical high school kids, sport clothes, fatigues maybe. I don't know.
Well, this group supposed to have something to do.
You know, the manager was in there talking to some client or somebody, and all this gang of hoodlums comes in, and I recognize Dave. After I do a double take, he just takes sunglasses on, you know, and I see a cop, and at first I figured a bunch of the killers, and I did a double look, and I see these kids in a ring, and I look at the Dave was peculiar looking.
Well, these kids supposed to have something to do with the Cuban operation, like a little...
No, they were just Dave's friends, happened to be ganging with him because he was in trouble, he was charged, you know. The father
Was Oswald just another one of his friends as far as...
apparently, yeah. Oh, I was casual, I don't know who this cat was. It was just casual, you know. It was less than 2 or 3 minutes, and then they went in and talked to Bannister. What he said, I don't know.
How long were they with Bannister?
Oh, hell, I don't know. I think I went over to those and had a beer after that. I don't think I went back. By the time I came back, they were gone. Either went in Jack Mancuso's cafe or over to Phil's next door. Because I think Joe Newbrook came in about then, and Joe and I went next door. Yeah.
All right.
On another occasion, Oswald had an office in the old Newman building, the old CIO building.
The same year, 63.
Yeah, about the same time.
What would he be doing with an office of all
I
that?
don't know, he had an office. You know old man Arthur?
Yeah, vaguely.
Jimmy Arthur has got an office up there in the Newman building right now. And Jimmy Arthur is going to open the door. Some of Lee Harvey Oswald's pamphlets are still laying in there. Hell, the FBI hadn't even picked them up.
Did he share a space with office?
No, oh, hell no. No, he said Oswald was a commie. But Dave used to go up and see up to this office up there all the time.
Was office friendly with Oswald?
Yeah, you know.
They thought he was a comic, but he was friendly with him.
Yeah, you know, we talked with him to get information out.
Will he be cooperative with us?
Arthur? Yeah, I guess so. When you go in to see that crazy old man, tell him that you were talking to him and up the rise, and he said that he might be able to. He thinks he'll be in his guy, see. And he knows, of course, that he knows the right, so he believes, you know.
Okay.
Remember the old man that he picked up on the dollar he went bit for putting out the monkey pictures? The hand those?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the old man. For picture of boy for DA, you've already had that?
That's right.
Yeah, that's old man, Arthur. He's Jim Garrison, man.
I don't think we picked him up. I think we just looked at him and laughed at him.
Yeah.
Tell us more about Oswald. You saw him once again, didn't you?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. It was in the company of Dave.
Barry?
I was in the company of Dave, but I'm trying to remember. I can't fit it in there, so Dave.
Boy, just a second. Hello? Yeah. Still busy. We'll do that in the same time. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay.
Vaguely, I was trying to pin it down last night. I was racking my brain to actually pin down conversation and text. You know, what might have been said in an actual train of conversation.
Well, then,
I wasn't particularly interested.
but when you read and saw on TV where Oswald killed Kennedy, didn't it come back to you the instances
Well,
when you
the
saw it?
first time I saw that rifle, my wife looked at it on television and said, "My God, that's the same rifles that Dave Perry had."
Oh, really? Was that your reaction?
Yeah. And I says, "It is, because Dave Perry loaned me one to take home. Somebody had been calling up and making threatening phone calls, and there was a crackpot came by my house one day, and when we lived in North Prairie, pounded on the window.
Your wife said that too on her reaction?
Yeah, and told my wife that they were looking for me, he was going to kill me, and this guy looked like he was good, you know. scared my wife half to death. And Dave loaned me one of those rifles. I had it in my house. I know what it looked like, and I give it back to him. Well, now, if Oswald, here's what Joe with me. The minute I saw this thing, if Oswald was with Dave Ferry in his CAP squadron, and Dave Ferry said he ordered these rifles mail order, and your old man, what's his name, Robert Coleman at that time, they did the news story for the Times-Picayune when they raided Ferry's house on Athenia Drive, mentioned the fact he had the arsenal. Now, Dave used to brag
What did
about...
they do with that arsenal when they raided it?
I don't know.
Jefferson
He had the rifles after they raided him. They give them back to him.
Jefferson Perry.
Yeah, he's got them up there right now on Louisiana Avenue Parkway, as far as I know.
But they might describe some of those rifles in that police report.
They do. In fact, Colonel Coleman gave the guy about a column and a half write-up in a Picayune when he was arrested out there. Now, without doubt, it hit my wife and I and said, I'll bet you that's where we Harvey Oswald learned to order the rifles by mail order. Dave Perry. I said, it's the same goddamn rifle. He didn't get it from Dave Perry, but somebody's learned how to get them from Dave Perry. No thanks. That was my first reaction.
He had the Italian type.
Yeah, but he'd be sworn to make rifles. Hell, I never paid any attention to what the make and model was, but they were full-action rifles, see? Right. Yeah, the whole rifle.
Where did he shoot them?
Well, I don't know.
Did he ever explain what he was forming? Did the Atlantic Committee kind of Roswell out there?
Squadron. Those were the drill rifles for the CAP squadron.
I never heard of a CAP outfit like this.
Well, I can't either. I never have either. So anyway, you know, a bunch of chemical lab equipment in these odds, man, it was fantastic.
The real thing I want to get to, though, is possible other time yourself.
It came over the WWL television, a release came over that David W. Ferry, that Oswald had formerly known as former airline pilot, was then in David W. Ferry's CAP squadron.
That came out
On
sometime.
television. It was announced on TV.
Documentary.
So the minute that hit, I picked up the phone, I got Bud Reed's standing back there.
Where that came out.
I don't know, it was announced on WWL that he had formerly been a Dave Ferry CAP squadron. Then it hit, see? The whole thing. And Reed just came over and I told him all this. And then two Secret Service cats came over and I told them. Now, David Ferry had two.
Well, did Secret Service people show any more interest in the FBI? No more?
No. The man asked me, he saw my Louisiana Colonel commission hanging up there, and he asked me about the colonel in the Army, and behind the wall, I said, no, I was a corporal, there's not much business there, I just whacked, you know. And, I said, what difference does that make? I said, I don't know if you buy for fire, and I said, you're going to judge me by my social standard, that's one thing, one is what I have to say, that's something else.
They went into the details about Perry?
They were more advanced, they were more interested in questioning me.
Oh, you mean they weren't interested in the connections with this Cuban group, for example?
Come see, come saw.
But they didn't write a note in this conversation.
Maybe a notation or two, they take a name out.
But not like Council.
No. Anyway.
In other words, looking back, I think that you have the impression now that they pretty much decided it was Oswald they were disclosed.
Well, they were probably fixed in their opinions. I never questioned the FBI for their motives. It's not my business to do that.
All right.
But the minute my wife and I saw these, let me steal another minute. The minute my wife and I saw those things, we snapped. I couldn't help it. Because everything was the same, you know. Then this nigger mechanic was running around with the poor people when they seen this nigger up there. And now this nigger was with us. Well, he'd way out in the car all the time. I mean, with Perry. But he'd be driving Perry around. So this nigger had to know us real well. And now I understand.
In other words, that's your point about the Negro.
That's right.
Bodyguard. He had kind of a bodyguard who was living now constantly and always was, even at wherever he went. So he had to know.
Now this.
Did these federal agents who questioned you show any interest in that possibility?
Didn't face it. Now this nigger, the reason I got mad at Perry one time was the fact that nigger had called my house and got my wife on the phone. And he got blunt with it, he got smart with it. Perry will say, give me a gun. And the nigger hand him a pistol. The nigger carries the curtain fell. And I seen Perry, Mrs. Martin, my wife, and my little boy were at Perry's house in the Athenia Drive at Christmas Eve night, back in 62, 63, back in there. And he had got a room on the bonnet room where after. And he was swinging, he was doing a dervish, he didn't have a drink in. So help me God, he was worse than Eugene told me. He'd stand in one position and do the dervish, he'd turn completely around. He just go up in there like a flying saucer. It's not an easy man. We left. We had some friend of ours come over and pick us up at a car goes home.
What about Oswald? You might have seen him somewhere else. Did you ever see him at his home or any place like that?
If I remember correctly, at the street, it might have been at his house. It might have been at his house.
No, but you did see him some other place one time.
Yeah. I was thinking yesterday that it was at Perry's house. It may have been because there was always a gang of young people in there. But I would go over there and talk to Dave strictly about his case and his
This
business.
is a house on Athenia Drive.
Athenia Drive, yes, sir. No, I've never been in that apartment up there. No. Perry, the reason Perry got teed off with me was that there was a guy by the name of Alexander Turner, the Right Reverend Alexander Turner. He's an Archimand Right under Basher at that time. He was the Metropolitan for the Syrian Orthodox Church in New York. It's a valid, legitimate, part of patriarchal church out of Istanbul, and focus of course. Perry made application to him for the Brazilian fathers to enter the Orthodox priesthood. Now, I had known Turner. In fact, Turner sent me his magazines, Orthodoxy, and all his literature. I get it free. I never paid a cent. I've known Turner this well. So, Alex writes to me. He says, Jack, what do you know on this man? So I go to the big dinner. I get copies of all of the news articles. And I said, whether the man is guilty or innocent, here's the state of the guy. I said, I can't lie to you. Here's the truth. Make your own decision. Perry found out that I had killed his application and was dead right now. Then he tried to get ordained by another Orthodox.
Why does he want to be a priest
I
so
don't
well?
know. In other words, he thought he'd have a sideline and a vocation to get back to like this. He lost his airline connection.
What does he do for a living?
He gets checks in the mail. His mother used to get checks all the time, and he'd take them away from her and cash it. And one check especially used to come.
He gets checks now? Well, I mean, I've seen that. He got checks.
At the Athenia Drive, he used to get the checks, and one of them was a check that looked like came out of a large checkbook with a vectograph. I can never see what company it was on. It was a kind of a pink-looking check.
Do you know if he works now?
He worked for G. Ray Gill.
Yes, since then.
And he blackmailed Gill. He got the Carlos Marcelo files. It was nice to Carlos Marcelo for enough money to put him in a gas station for this out there at Veterans Highway. And
Who on the gas station business?
there he was. He was a golf distributor, a golf dealer. He was at the corner of Metry Heights and Veterans Highway.
What happened to that?
I don't know. He conned Carlos Marcelo out of several $1,000s. They kind of goofed off at it. Now, Carlos might have something in his airplane business. I don't know. He might have had to do that to keep the contract off his neck. I don't know. The Gulf station is now owned by Polizzi, Polizzi. That's the Gulf station. The telephone number is 835-9214.
Who's it owned by now?
Polizzi.
What is it?
Yeah.
What's his first name?
I don't know. But his telephone number is 835-9214.
835-1?
9214.
9214.
I understand he's not too happy with that.
All right.
I haven't talked to Miss Polizzi, but I got this from the health people, so this is what I opened here from the guy that used to deliver gasoline out there from the station.
All right. Can you recall anything about the other circumstances when you saw Oswald in any way?
Well, I know that Oswald had those offices up there that were in Kelly's vehicles. That's around, those addresses, 540.
No, but I mean in his connection with Perry, like at his home.
Well, Perry used to go up there back and forth in that office all the time.
Well, he put Oswald's office?
Yeah, hell yes he did. That's it, Perry was in, and a communist got Oswald in here tight, see? That's what I mean.
How did you know he was going to Oswald, Jack?
He was upstairs, going up and down the stairs here all the time. After the regular court, they had moved out of the building.
So what, you bump into him there?
I was coming around from Bannister's all the time, going over to Bill's and in Mancuso's Cafe. I'd see him coming in and out. See his car parked out there in the street. I looked down and where he was.
I see Bouncer's office in the same area.
That's right, at 531 of Lafayette, right around the corner in the rear of Mancuso's Cafe there. Mancuso's right on the corner, Jack Mancuso's place. Then there was a little shirt shop, then the entrance to the Newman building. And then next door to that was the shirt shop, and next door to that was Bill's bar, see? Incidentally, you know who owns that building there, don't you?
Oh.
Sam Newman downstairs with Louis Hyde. That's the one Bannister's office. Bannister owed Newman about 4 G's when Bannister died.
Did he ever explain why he was with Oswald so much?
No, I never asked him. No, I didn't know nothing about Oswald at the time.
At this time, Perry was still an investigator with Gil.
That's right. This is between, no, this is before the time. And then he started to go with Gil. And then Brown Lee went with Barry up there, too, you know. Well, see, Brown Lee was proud, Gil's fine.
Brown, huh?
Yeah, Brown Lee was fine. And all Gil hated Brown Lee for a fashion. He hated
Oh, they were close.
Well, he's had that little stinker that runs with that son of a bitch. There's a lot of causing all the trouble. That's what Gil was.
Morris Brownlee?
Morris Brown.
Tell us about him.
Yeah.
What about him?
Morris Brownlee lives at, he probably got his address.
Jefferson Highway?
Yeah.
What is it?
Talk to Warlock. Couldn't be nice. There's no intention whatsoever. Damage you.
You just came at the wrong time.
I was mean, I was rough, and said, no, you didn't understand. I did it all, I said, I'm gonna put it in there just like you said.
Warlaw has always been very fair. In case he was calling at the wrong time, don't you?
So, it was, question said, I may even be able to give you a boost now. You want a little information, I gave him the rap sheet on these guys.
Well, anyway,
I don't know about Brownlee. You have to get his address later. Tell me about Brownlee.
it's 833-6444 is the telephone number, and it's on Jefferson Highway. I remember that. It's got 3 4s at the end of it. It's an 833 prefix. It's in the telephone book. It's not under Morris Brownlee, but it's under Brownlee. BROWNLE, one word.
Jim, Jim, I think I can do some work on the editorial.
By all means, go ahead. You got a copy? See my guess. Go ahead, tell me more about this Brownlee.
All right.
What's this,
Brownlee to me was always the epitome of fashion at this time. He would come to my house, and he,
dressed well?
oh no, the time suits, well tailored, well groomed, always well groomed. Immaculate as a pin. Tie always cinched up nice.
Did you feel that way?
No, not that I was hanging, not when he was hanging out in the corn club down there.
Kind of a bit there, didn't you?
Yeah. Now Brownlee,
You ain't doing a quorum club and a real world and in that area.
yeah, well, I'll tell you, who can tell you all about the narcotics rap. Brownlee was involved.
I know about it.
You know, I even know the doctor that set him up. He's not an MD. His license in 1963 with Gerald Edwin Andrew Miller.
Well, I'm on some Brownlee.
Anyway, Dr. Miller and Dr. Moore, you know Jerry Moore, don't you?
No.
The dentist? He knows he helped you during the election.
Oh, I probably know about him. I'm thinking about that
Dr.
area.
Moore, your dentist out there on Jeff Highway, I would gladly tell you that he knows all about Brownlee.
What's his name?
Moore, M-A-U-T.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
M-A-U-T-E-R-E-R.
It should, what's his first name?
Gerald.
Waterworth.
Gerald Moore. Yeah, hell, he's no way Moore downstairs. That's his cousin.
Is you give us info on Perry, Brownlee Runner?
Yeah, he knows about both of them. Dr. Moore has also got a degree in psychology as well as dentistry, and he agrees with me that Perry is one of the few cases of, he's one of the few legends we've met that are masochistic, sadistic masochists. They love to persecute themselves. They're brilliant people. They'll build themselves up and then lead themselves to their own destruction.
Well, tell me more about Brown. He has some connection